Okay, let's review what we've done. We took our doll and we measured the important areas, which were the waist, the seam line, the inner thigh, the distance of our garment, which could have been pants if we had gone on longer, the distance between the hips, and the distance between the top of the hips, because it matters. Because this distance is not the same as this distance, because her hips come out and they flare out because she's a little female. So what we did was we took all these measurements and we put them here and we wrote them down. Okay? And this was the how to measure your doll page. So you're measuring your doll, see? And you can see how I worded it. Okay, now we discarded that because we transferred this. See, this would have been in diameter, meaning the diameter of the doll. So we had to half these measurements because we're dealing in two-dimensional. You know, we're dealing with a pattern, which eventually is going to look like this. So what we had to do was we had to half the measurement, the 3.5 inches for the waistline. We had to half it for the top of the hip because we're only doing the front of the shorts that we're going to sew onto her body. Okay? So you half all of these except for the length of the shorts, which was 2 inches, which I drew a line here, and that's 2 inches. So that stays the same, and the inseam stays the same. So those are the two things that you're not going to have. Those are the two things that are constant and are never going to change. Okay, now, and the reason why is because we didn't measure from the front of the waist to the back of the waist. We measured from the top of the waist to the middle of the inseam. Okay? So, what we got here was, I came in and I took these measurements and I got my ruler and I drew those measurements out. You know, basically what I did first was I drew lines and put circles, and then I put waistline. I drew another line where I knew would match up with my arrows. Okay, that's the first thing you have to do, is you have to match up the arrow and where it's going to lay in your pattern. So that's what the original lines were about, to match up each part, each section of that pattern that you're going to draw and connect those dots eventually. With me? Now, the triangles that you see are the true measurements. So, I know on that top waistline, with those from here to here, I know somewhere in there is going to be the waistline measurement. And that waistline measurement was 1 12/8 inch. So what I did was, I went to my 1 inch mark and I measured 1 12/8 inch. The 8s that were left over, which would have been, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, which would have been here, that would have left me on my line 4/8 left over. So you just take, what you do is you scoot 2/8 over to the end of the line, and you know your starting point for your waistline. So you know that there's 2/8 on each side, because that original line is too long, too wide. Okay. So then I came down at the top of the hip. So that measurement was 2 1/8. So that's really 1 1/16. Okay. So what I did was, let's see, 2. Okay, I know that that's true. I'm sorry. I know that 2 1/8 is the true measurement. So I came over here and I measured out 2 1/8, and I drew Okay, so essentially what you're going to do is, that's the theory behind this. Okay, so okay, now I messed up my calculations on my waistline a little bit, so I changed it to 1 inch, 1 1/4 inch from 1 12/8. Okay, and so then on the next level, which is the top of the hip, I drew a line that was 2 1/8, because that's what it says here, 2 1/8. Then I drew a line that says 2 4/8, because it says 2 4/8, and that's the widest point of the hip. Okay, then we have, I'm not going to worry about the 1/16 and 1/8 inch thigh right now. So what I did was I drew a line to show the 2 inches and how long the shorts are going to be. That's the line with the dot on the end of it. Now I want to be concerned about the thigh measurement. Okay, so originally the diameter of the thigh we were going to take to 3 1/4 inches. So I took it to, because you're going to half this, because this is going to be the front part of your pattern piece. I took it to 1 2/4 inches, okay, across from here to here. Okay. Alright, now I added 1/4 inch to this. Okay, so I did 1 inch and 1 2/4 inch, and then I added an extra 1/4, and from that 1/4 I drew a line up to this point here. I did the same on this side, and I came and I turned my ruler over, and I came to this side and I measured 1. Let's see, here's the 1 inch, and 1/4 would be here, and then I added 1. Okay, and that made the line which I was going to draw, which gave me a true 1 2/4 inch measurement by adding that extra, because you need to be able to draw a line that's going to show you how you're going to cut your pattern out. So that's what that extra 1/4 inch does when you add it towards the center. So then I came up here and I drew kind of like I squared it off in the crotch, okay, area. So it's kind of like a rectangle right here in the crotch area. And what that tells you is that that is where your sew line is going to be, you know. Okay? Now, if you put your doll up here, you're going to see we're pretty spot on about her short pattern. Okay? Now what you're going to do is add a seam allowance, because if you put it on like this, it's going to be too tight. So we're going to add either an 1/8 or a 1/4 inch. It's whatever you feel comfortable with. If you use a 1/4 inch, you're going to turn it under more, but you're going to have more to work with, and it's a little easier. Okay? I usually do a 1/4 inch, so I'm going to draw a 1/4 inch. If you feel you need to do an 1/8 of an inch, then you do that. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to move my doll, and I know that I'm going to draw a 1/4 inch seam allowance right here. Okay, and being her waist is what it is, I'm going to come up a little bit like that. Okay. Because if you didn't do that, then it's not going to lay down on her straight. You know, there's not going to be like a like if you're going to do waistband with elastic, you know. So what I'm going to do is now I have my pattern here. So I'm going to draw from here to here and here to here. And this would be the left and this would be the right. Okay? So there's two patterns here. So it comes out and down and it comes up. And remember, you're going to add your seam allowance on both sides of your pattern. Okay? Just like that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut my pattern piece out. So I'll be right back.